Hi, everybody. I should have known everybody would be here and that this audience would be like, the hell with the bomb cyclone. We're going to hear some art tonight. So introducing tonight's show is such a special pleasure for me. It was 8.5 years ago, that Barbara Earl Thomas opened up Heaven on Fire upstairs. I'm sure most of you remember that. And I remember it because it was my first week on the job. And so for me, it was a very auspicious moment, a lot of poetry in that moment. And I just am so delighted to be here tonight. Long before then, and well into the present, Barbara has been making extraordinary visual art, as well as doing many other incredible things at the same exact time. Her artwork has unfolded so beautifully, including painting, glasswork, sculpture, installations, immersive spaces, paper cut work. And our region is so lucky to have a lot of her public work on display. She's had major exhibitions at the Seattle Art Museum, the Tacoma Art Museum, and BIMA. And my most recent experience with her work was this beautiful moment that actually sort of led into this, what you see up here tonight, which was I was lucky enough to accompany Cynthia Sears on a trip to Philadelphia, where we made a special trip to the gallery that was staging the Illuminated Body show that Barbara put together. And I just have to take a minute to describe, we walked into this old, beautiful building on Penn campus, and the room was, it was a small and intimate room. It was filled with these beautiful works of art on the wall. So it looked sort of like a chapel with these beautiful church windows. There was cut paper that was cascading from the ceiling in an installation over an actual stained glass window. And there was cello music that was just wafting through the gallery. And it was a really, really special and powerful moment. And we're so lucky that Cynthia Sears purchased these two pieces of art, and they've been promised to the BIMA collection. So it's a very wonderful story for us. But this is a woman who does not just have one superpower. Barbara is an amazing writer, poet, essayist, and she gets stuff done. She is the founding director of the Northwest African American Museum. She has received a Stranger Genius Award, the Mayor's Art Award, the Twining Humber Award. She worked on, this is how I met her. She was the mayorally appointed liaison to Bumbershoot when I worked on it. And she's been an inspiration and a mentor to so many people, including myself, and has worked with so much intention and impact and made this arts landscape so incredibly brilliant. Another person that I could say the same about, he has made this art landscape more brilliant, is Chief Curator Greg Robinson. Greg's been working his magic here at BIMA since before the doors opened. And before that, he held executive positions at the Museum of Northwest Art, Pratt Fine Arts Center, Traver Gallery, and he has been enriching this landscape for all of us for so many years. So it's just my extraordinary pleasure to welcome them both up to stage. They'll be joining for conversation, talking to Barbara about where her art has come from, where she's going, what she's got on her mind these days. Gretchen will be joining us. There'll be a short intermission, and then Gretchen Yanover will be playing some of her amazing music. So thank you very much for coming tonight, and welcome Greg and Barbara.
I think it's on now.
Is it on or did I turn it up? There it goes.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Sheila, for the wonderful introduction and an overview of just some of the things that Barbara Earl Thomas has done to pursue her own artistic visions, but also enrich our region so much. This tonight is nickname for it is called Catch Up. And I was thinking that I've been trying to catch up with Barbara Earl Thomas my entire arts career in the Seattle region since the mid-90s when I moved back from the East Coast. And that's because Barbara's been involved in so many important things, but also I was the director at Pratt Fine Arts Center in the Central area when she was pursuing some other wonderful things, like Sheila mentioned, the Northwest African American Museum, which has just been, an amazing addition to our landscape. And when we talked about doing an exhibition here, I told Barbara she was too young to have a retrospective. And it wasn't just age, but also I knew that there was so much more in her. And we were chatting in advance tonight, just briefly, because I don't have any notes right now. We're just going to talk. We decided to keep it light. And maybe people just need an evening out, like Sheila mentioned. We've had a few bombs go off. And but basically, when I approached Barbara, and when I say approach, it's a huge honor for someone like Barbara Earl Thomas to say yes to do a show at BIMA. And it's part of why was that Barbara's life reflects BIMA's mission so much, not just the art, but everything she's done and meant and added to us. And we were talking about how BIMA is largely about artists who are lesser known. And that is so relative because Barbara's always been extremely well known in this region, well collected, well admired and respected. But there's been this great surge of national, international activity and attention. And that's what we're going to chat about a little bit tonight. I said to Barbara, she had some slides they were going to loop and it was going to be pretty and lighthearted. And I said, no. I know you're not shy, but we're gonna fill some people in and catch up a little bit. So let's start. I'd love to hear your story about how and when you met Claire Oliver, who has Claire Oliver Gallery in New York City.
Well, I think that, one of the things I think that I always try to pull together, honestly, I don't know why people want to know these things, but, if they want to know them, then I will tell them. And I guess the story that is, I think in terms of how we live our lives and what stories we tell ourselves and what ways we can, sort of actualize ourselves in the world, I think all of it becomes a story because actually nothing we do is really linked. It's like you get up in the morning, you put on your clothes, you have breakfast, you get your kids ready, you get in your car. Well, you put that together and all of a sudden you got a story. Even though putting your clothes on and getting in the car may have something to do with it, but it's really not a story until you make it one in your head. And so how I decided, I don't know, it was right after during my show here at BIMA, I said, you know what? I just really need to see what will happen if I take my little body car out on the freeway and see how fast it can go and see what happens when the wheels fall off. I said, what are you saving it for? You know how we were when we were young, you get this outfit for Easter, or you get it for what, and you saved it because that's for good. And you saved the other thing because that's for good. And I think when I turned like 20, I looked back in my closet and I had every Easter outfit that I had, and I hadn't worn them because I was saving them for good. Now they were all out of style and they were just all hanging there perfectly. So I decided, at this point, I said, let me see how far I can go. And so I went to the first Seattle Art Fair, and I think it was in 2016. And I said, I'm just going to go here and see if I can introduce myself to people and see if I can figure out how to get myself beyond the Washington border. And I did all the things that you weren't supposed to do. And they tell you, don't take your portfolio. Don't give people things. Don't ask them questions. And don't do any of those things.
There's a couple more things on the list, but she's pretty much got it.
And so anyway, I had these little portfolios. I had like 6. I said, so I'm going to go. I had one appointment. I met this guy. He was really kind, and he listened to me. He didn't tell me I was wrong. And I got up. I said, well, I did that. So I went around, and I just, gave people things and introduced myself. And every now and then I'd come back. There was a woman standing by the wall. I thought it was a glass gallery because she had Beth Lipman and Lauren Finsterstock. And I thought, well, she says, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm just throwing myself into the crowd. So I'd go out and I'd throw myself and introduce myself and be terrorized and terrified. And people turned their backs on me, some of them, and some of them were like, oh my God, what is she doing? And so at the very end of the day, I was so tired. And I walked over and I looked at Claire and I said, you know, I've done it all. I said, I have one packet left and I'm going to give it to you. And you got one job, is to not throw it away until I get out that door. That's all you have to do. I think you're capable. And so I go out the door and I'm so tired. I have to take my shoes off to walk across my feet are just killing me. And so I think that was a Saturday or a Sunday. On Wednesday, she called me. She said, I looked at your stuff and it looks kind of good. So I'm going to fly out on Friday. I said, is this a joke? And so anyway, I ended up getting this gallery and I felt like, you know what? Sometimes you just have to break your own rules and, you know, and torment yourself in a way. And it was torment what I did, because it was not fun having people turn their backs on me. But as I like to say, I've had people, higher caliber people than you turn their backs on me. So that was, you know, the story. And then I had my first show there in 2017 and went to the art fair and walked around the art fair. And I looked at all the work and I said, Barbara, you got to step up your game. So all of those things in terms of challenging myself, and all I figured was all I can do is fail. You know, all I can do is work really hard and possibly fail. And maybe I won't.
It was the period, I think you showed glass for the first time, right, in that period as well.
Well, this work right here, this was from the BIMA show in 2016. And I had not shown glass, and I was telling Greg, you know, he came through and he asked me one year, and then I couldn't quite get it together. And then he came back, he says, I'm gonna come to the studio. And he's walking around and he says, I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this. And I was looking at him and I'm going like, is this gonna be a garage sale? Because I never had a show where all the stuff was all together, because normally what happens in the world, if you do more than one thing and you do a lot of more than one thing, people think you're scattered and that you really don't quite know what you're doing. So if they see too many things, they sometimes think you're not grounded. So I couldn't understand a show that had glass and paintings and all the things. And so here was the first place where I got to make my first installation, and explaining that to Greg and the great install team. Greg had no idea what I was going to do. I said, I want to cut this paper and I want to build this room. We've got to figure out how to hang it. And I don't know how it's going to go, but I think it's going to be like this. And he keeps going, okay. And really, it was just, I think about art like this. It's about solving a problem. And that's where we are now, you see. The imagination puts you in a place where you can think about, how can I solve this problem and get myself through it? And so that was part of my experience, and that was so well supported here at BIMA.
And your work, from my point of view, I've been able to enjoy it at different shows and galleries before we ever worked with Barbara on this show at BIMA. But it's always been cohesive to me. Your work, your ideas have evolved, but it's not like sometimes you do a solo exhibition with an artist and it feels like a group show. You know, they do their minimalist period, 1 decade, and then what my mother did to me when I was 6, and you know, but you know, with Barbara, the personal visions, the social issues, the beautiful, beautiful way that she confronts history and leads us somewhere better. And when you talked about adding the poetry and everything seemed poetic to me. Visual, you know, I can being a visual in the visual arts, you imagine things, and I knew it would be a beautiful show, and it really was.
And I think that one of the things that I learned about that show, one of the things that allowed me to think about how I was going to move into the next decade, was if I was going to make something that was big and bigger than me, that I needed to figure out how to have people help me and how to have them be in there, what parts I could give over to them and what parts I needed to lead with myself. And so that in and of itself, and I think I learned that just from doing glass, because if anyone here has done glass, or, you know, as Maggie, you do lots of things, and, you know, where you have to have people help you and you just can't do it alone. So when I went and did the glass, I realized, you had people that were the gaffers, and they were the people that were blowers, and the people that were twirling it and all of that. And I said, I need that dance in my studio. And so this show was the first show that I was able to make that happen. So this is, again, up in the gallery upstairs.
And you have a few slides to help catch us up. I'm really curious about some of the projects, the windows at the Yale Library, et cetera.
So the second show that I did with the paper was at Seattle Art Museum, and that was in, I think, 2020. And I, I took what I learned and turned it over and said, I think I'm gonna fill the whole room, and I get the whole room, and I get to control all the light, and I got control issues. Let's just say it. And of course, and so this was a good way to work out those control issues. And this was my first illuminated room, and this was from the show, The Geography of Innocence. And the light boxes, they're glass, and the only difference between the piece that's in the center and the walls really is how I lit it, so that the walls are being reflected the color, and then there was just a very light, kind of cool light for that, because I wanted that feeling of stepping through and having the light be what is the subject. It's the detail. And I just want you to notice, sort of the geography, the geometry here, because things really change as we go forward. Got something else to say, dude?
No, that was a beautiful show, really beautiful.
And then the next show I did that actually overlapped because of COVID was my show, Packaged Black, I did with Derek Adams at the Henry Gallery. And so the ceiling piece that is here was made, all of these things were made specifically. The piece I made for BIMA was specifically for this space. The piece for Sam was specifically for that space. So I got my little team out, and we got out our knives, and we just started cutting. And this is Cinderella Redressed. It's a 9-foot, lit kind of, it's my superhero thing. I always wanted to do something about Cinderella and what I'd wear if I got to go to the ball. And I said, well, it's going to be big, it's going to be bright, and it's going to be like I'm going to fly in. Fly over the pumpkin. So this is all hand-cut paper, and underneath there's voile, underneath the skirt, and then just a light bulb. So everything does not have to be over-technical. I still haven't run out of what to do with a light bulb. So I'm still fascinated by the light bulb. One of the things in between all of that, because the Sam show happened and the Henry show happened, and then I got shortlisted for a project at Yale. And that was when they were redoing the John Calhoun College, and they were renaming it because there had been a lot of controversy about, John Calhoun having been a slave owner, and, the students rallied and were really kind of agitating for it. And at first they were not going to change the windows. They were not going to change the name of the college. And then over time, the president decided, yeah, we need to do that. And so my job was to tell the story of the change of the name of the John Calhoun College to the Grace Murray Hopper. And any of you who know who Grace Murray Hopper was, she did go to Yale, but of course, women were not able to graduate from Yale until 1969. So I know, isn't that something? But she went there, she was a mathematician, she was an admiral in the Navy, she was just this amazing character. And so they decided to name the college for her. And my job, at least the way I saw it, was to talk about this history-making moment, but also to make sure that we were able to go to the present, but also hold on to what the past was. So you'll see here, I have John Calhoun, whose name is being taken sort of to the middle ground, and by a robin, and a hummingbird is bringing Grace Murray Hopper's name to the foreground. And I did that because I feel like it's really important to know where we've been. And to have not put it in there would mean that there are all those people that graduated from John Calhoun College who can go back and say, oh yeah, there was this moment in time where it changed. But there's John, and here Grace in all her glory. And what happened during the incident that was the catalyst for all this was that there was a maintenance worker in the dining hall, and he had been looking there. The windows that were there, I always call them the happy slaves, and the happy slaves, and he got tired of seeing the happy slaves, and he took a broom handle and he broke the windows. And so that was the catalyst. And quite frankly, everyone was not on his side. Some people were really angry about it, even the people that worked with him. And some people were, very understanding of why he did that. But one of the things I wanted to say was here, this piece is called Broken is Mended. And I don't say that I made it all right. I'm just saying that the break happened, and what our job is to live past and over it, but not forget. If you broke your leg, you'd always know, even if you're walking with a really lovely gait now, that break, it will always be there, and it will always be something that you're reminded of. So I wanted to mark that moment. And one of the things I was not asked to do, but I decided, this is my moment, so why not? And so I replaced the 6 windows that I was tasked with, and then I decided I was going to put an image of Grace Hopper on one side, and the Roosevelt here, the young man you see here in the front, he was a really well-loved student at Yale, and they thought actually he was going to be the first Black president, but he was killed in a car accident on his way back to Yale. And so the study center is named for him. So I thought I'd put him on one side and Grace on the other, and then with the medallions in between. And then it's kind of set inside of cut metal. And this is just to show you what the process. I make my designs with cut paper, so I cut the paper, and this is my drawing for what the windows were, and it kind of just looks just like that, and that's what they look like. So it was really honor. It was real honor, and I feel like, sometimes you don't get to dwell on it. You just keep moving, but I really did find it to be an honor, and to go there and to see the students and realize that some of them didn't quite understand that the reason that they were there was because of things that Grace did, that, the kitchen staff did, all those people. And I said, you don't really know what the miracle is that you are. This seems normal to you. But for me, seeing you here is not, I won't say it's not normal, but it is remarkable.
Barbara, this next series is largely why we're here tonight, and we're going to hear Gretchen's wonderful music. But can you go back one slide? Can we just pause there? I just have to ask everyone to help me give you a round of applause for making our world so much better.
Thank you. Well, I mean, one of the things that was really this was all during COVID, so I did everything through the mail. My color samples, we'd send them via, UPS and get them back, and we'd correct them, and then I'd send me the sample of the glass. I'd get it back, I'd correct it. So everything happened through the mail, but one of the wonderful things that did happen was they had a Zoom. I wasn't really even that used to Zoom, but all the students, of course, were stuck all in their homes all around the world. And so what I did was they said, well, let's have a couple of Zoom meetings and see who pipes in. And I said, I'm going to design 4 of the panels, but I'm going to leave 2 or 3 empty. And I want you to tell me, if you were telling this story, what would you want to see? And what things would you want to see remarked upon? And so I had kids calling, from Singapore, from, Europe, from wherever they were in the world, Texas, wherever they were, kind of piping in and talking about, what it felt like to be, sort of not at school, but knowing that this event was continuing to move forward. And also I wanted to talk to them because a number of them would graduate before the windows went in. So I wanted to make sure those who had been very much involved in the, the event could also know that we really were going to do this, and that we knew the genesis of part of the, the whole action. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the show that, that brings us here and to be with Gretchen and my portrait of Charles Johnson. How many people know who Charles Johnson is? Y'all know? Yeah, he's a really well-known writer, essayist, playwright, cartoonist, and he lives right here in Seattle. And the whole genesis for kind of what I did with this show was I wanted to talk about people and how they extend themselves into the world. We come here, we've got our bodies, we have our talk, we write, but, lots of us try to go like, how can I make this single island here that I'm in be expressive, and how do I add and make that part of me extend out into the world? And I said, well, that's what artists do. Musicians do that, writers do that, painters do that, people who are librarians or whatever you do that, your thing in the world. And so this whole series was basically about the artist and, the person and. So this first image is of Seth Parker Woods, and he is actually a really well-known cellist, as well as, with Gretchen. And I met him when I had a residency at this Seattle Symphony. And he was sitting on the other side, and he was playing with his people. And I looked at him, and for whatever reason, I don't know why I do this. I just thought I knew him. And I walked over, and I said something kind of nutty. And he kind of looked at me, and I said, I guess I don't really know him. But anyway, it turned out he had asked me after a period, he was doing a whole concert on Jacob Lawrence and this whole suite of pieces that had been composed for that. And because I'm with the Lawrence Foundation, he wanted to know if he could get access to the reproductions. And so up on the stage was this beautiful, there he was with his singular cello, and this large Jacob Lawrence migration series was behind him. And I thought that would be a wonderful thing to make. So here you see Seth, and then I've redone the migration, but in my colors behind him. So people go like, what is that? Why does that look so familiar? I said, I just lifted it. Oops, I go backwards. And,
And by the way, let me just pipe in. Barbara is very close to Jacob Lawrence and Gwendolyn Knight, and still tours the country and wherever, lecturing on Jacob's legacy.
And I think that, it's a big responsibility. But for me, I also wanted to talk about my love. I'm what you like to call a book person. I read books that have pages. And so, I have lots of young people around me who do the same thing. So I put one of my studio assistants inside of what is my library, and so that I could talk about the idea of how literature and artwork and the written word extends into the world. In this piece, and I'm just going to go through these really quickly. This is called Ticket to the World. I met this young man. He used to cut my hair, and I'd go in, and he would just be telling these fantastic stories about where he would take his daughter. He's a single dad, and once a year he takes his daughter on one big kind of adventure trip. Maybe they'll go see waterfalls, or they'll go someplace and just see something amazing. And I thought, how amazing. So I did an image of him and his daughter, and it's called Ticket to the World. And I kind of feel like, what we're all looking for. I got these really old maps of, Atlantis, and I superimposed the Atlantis on top of his body, and somehow Atlantis fell right across the front of his shirt. And so at the bottom it says Terra Incognito. And I feel like what we're all trying to do really in our lives is find our own Atlantis. And so here's Charles. This one, of course, I did it because I wanted people to see how big it was. But now, even when I see it here, it's really large.
Yeah.
This is August Wilson. And I put these two people together because August Wilson and Charles Johnson were really good friends. And you used to sit in these cafes up on Capitol Hill, and they'd be smoking and talking about philosophy well into the night. And every now and then I'd pop in and insinuate myself on their very male philosophical talks. And somehow I ended up being able to just be there with them. And, you know, inside of the things, I'm always trying to tell stories within a story. And here you'll see that I've made August's pocket into a hummingbird feeder. And there's a hummingbird that's drinking from his pocket. And trumpet offering. And all these people are people that I know. This is the son of one of my really good friends. This is Riley Moherker, and he's really well known. He's with the group called the Westerlies. And the way I know him is because I live next to his trumpet teacher. So when he was very young, he would go up the stairs, and I could hear everything from across the driveway. So when things were going well, I heard that. When things weren't going so well, but, you know, over the years, I just watched him grow up, and, you know, now he's just famous. So I thought, you know what? I think I'll capture him too. We're getting to the, and this is a young woman whose mother I know, and she's in love with horses. And she's become very amazingly good in dressage. So I wanted to tell that story. And I was commissioned to do a piece on Jacob Lawrence. It was the very first piece I've done on Jacob. I've never done anything, but this hangs in front of the Jacob Lawrence Gallery at the University of Washington. And my one assignment was just to make sure that the tools of his trade were incorporated. So I think he looks good. And then, of course, there's Gretchen.
And please tell us how you met Gretchen.
Well, I'm not even sure I met her. I encountered Gretchen. And I was on my way to somewhere. I don't know if it was New York or somewhere. And I was walking through the airport. And I heard this music. It was like out there. And it was just like not like music you could normally sometimes hear at the airport. So I'm just walking through. So I just kind of go over by the music. And there's this lovely person there just sort of playing a cello, you know, sort of kind of looking down, but very much having made this sort of dome of sound around herself. And people would sometimes stop. But what I noticed was when people walk by her, it was kind of like this river. It's like, you know, you see those beautiful boulders in the middle of the water, and the water just goes around the boulder, and it just goes like that. It was like that. People would come and they would encounter her, and they would just flow around her. So they made this shape around her as they moved back and forth. So I stood and I listened. I said, that's amazing. The airport's like getting its game together. So I may have left, you know, $1, whatever I left. And then I went and I got on the plane and went away, I don't know, maybe 5 days, 6 days. And I got off the plane and came back. And there was Gretchen again. I said, did she go home? I don't remember what she was wearing, but she was still there. And so I listened to her again. I stopped. This time I could listen because I wasn't rushing to somewhere. And I thought, that's really interesting. That really made my moment in the airport nicer. And so I went away, and somehow I just kept seeing her. I said, well, this is something. I need to figure out who she is, and I need to figure out why I need to figure out who she is. And so long story short, I ended up meeting her. Did I call you Gretchen? I can't quite remember, but ended up meeting her and asking her if I could do an image of her. So shall we call her to the...
Yes, well, we're actually going to take a brief intermission.
Well, I'm not quite. I'm going to finish this off. This was the piece that Sheila talked about seeing in Philadelphia. And this is the room. And actually, the reason the room was so small and very jewel-like was because it was the former Shakespeare Library at UPenn. And so that was extra special for me. And the windows that are behind it, the architecture is called, it's Viennese Gothic. And so these windows were these beautiful kind of Gothic windows. And so this piece, this installation was the first one where I got to actually do a cutting that was going to be over natural light so that it wasn't just the light I was controlling in the room. So that was just really, so this piece was 16 feet long, and then the room is 9 by 9. And finally, as I said before, one of the things that was so wonderful about getting to go into this next phase is that you don't do anything alone. So on the side here, the redhead, you see that's Peggy. She's back there. And Chieko is one of my people. She was the person that's in the art library, and she's in lots of my things. And, you know, people come and go, but I always like to name the people who have helped me and name sort of how I've been able to do things that are so much bigger than myself, because it really is true. Maybe I have the idea, but I couldn't execute it without, you know, lots of help. So now you can say your thing.
Thank you very much, Barbara. And thank you for helping to make my career so much more meaningful, because it's working with artists like you. When we change shows, we typically do it 3 times a year, big time, and we do other kinds of pop-up things. And people come in and say, how does BIMA keep doing such great shows? And I always say, having amazing, compelling artists doing really wonderful work helps, you know, come on. So, but thank you so much. And it's an honor to be here with you again tonight. We're going to take a break. We do have some the things at the bistro, and we'll take a restroom break, whatever you want to do. Tomorrow, we open Nikki Jabora Barber's show, which is soft opened. We don't have labels and things up yet, and some pieces from the permanent art collection as well. So you can wander around, but let's all get back here in about 10 minutes or so.
And so will Gretchen will be with us, or is Gretchen going to be alone?
No, Gretchen, if Gretchen, would you please say some words about yourself too?
Can you come here, please, Gretchen, before we, right now?
Yeah.
Let's be impromptu.
And would you be willing to just introduce yourself and say some words?
Come up here.
Okay. Yeah. Hello. Happy to be here. Thank you.
So do you even remember? You don't know how I met you.
Well, I do remember because I think what happened is you maybe joined my mailing list.
Yeah.
And we maybe chatted a little, and then I looked you up, and it was like, wow, this person likes my music. That's so awesome. So I was very honored, you know.
I like. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
And then we met, and I think that. Were you surprised by what I did, or I remember you coming to the studio, but it was
Yes.
partly done.
Yes, well, and so, I mean, what I loved, so many things about it, but also, I'm looking at Barbara in this image because we met at a cafe and with her camera when I was, just playing so that she could capture some images. And so, well, and I don't know if I said this to you when I first saw it, but I was like, that's my next album cover. So I was in the process of my recording my 5th album, Holding Movement. I had a grant from Seattle Office of Arts and Culture that helped me get a little more ambitious with that album. So there's several of the pieces are paired with poems from Seattle writers. And so anyhow, there's just so much convergence in this one, artistic convergence. And so I was also just thrilled that Barbara allowed me to use the image for her album.
And I
for
think
my album.
again, I think there was that thing where she let me capture her image, and then she says, "Well, can I use that?" I said, "Sure." So there's been lots of things where it's just really it's exchange. No money, just the exchange, and sometimes that's just how it should be. And if anyone's ever read Lewis Hyde's, The Gift, art on the gift economy, I think that we all work sometimes on that economy, and when it works, it's really what magic is about. And I hadn't seen the album or the CD cover till I got here tonight, so I was really delighted. I said, "That looks good." So I want to thank you for allowing me to do that, and for all the music you made, and for all the people who you make their time, when you, let alone at the airport, because you need something when you're there. But, just in the world, the music is beautiful, and I love the shape of the cello because I think it's like a body. it's like another body, and I love seeing how the body and how she kind of works with that. And I really, I'm not done, because sometimes I'll do something and I said, I almost got it. Maybe I'll try it again. So that was my story.
Yeah, thank you. And and you'll see I'm playing on my electric cello, and so I do play my acoustic in orchestra and Northwest Sinfonietta Orchestra, chamber music, and recording my albums. But yes, I have my future sci-fi cello here right now that you'll hear.
Super sci-fi. Well, thank you so much. So go get a bite. Please come back. You won't regret that you've heard this cello music. I promise.
Thank you for coming back. That first piece is one from my latest album. And are you guys familiar with looping? So this pedal that I have on the floor, it looks like most people are nodding. If anyone is like, what is going on here? So I'm recording what I'm doing in the moment with my pedal here on the floor. Okay, my next piece is called I Have Spread My Roots Across Borders. Ooh. And I am growing still. Thank you, Cole. Cole is doing awesome sound here. So that is a phrase from a poem by Ali Ong, and the poem is called What Are You? So with the latest album, there's a booklet of poetry of the full poems that I had utilized pairing. Okay, here we go. Okay, my next piece is one from my first album, Bow and Cello, which came out in 2005, which means it's almost 20 years old, which is wild. I was honored to be in this year's cohort of the PBS Crosscut Black Arts Legacies, and I was like, well, okay, 20 years, so I guess I could be a legacy now. This piece is called Will. Thank you. And do we still have at least one young cellist in the audience? I see one cellist. I don't know if there's other cellists, but I did put a score for that on my website, but I also made an arrangement that still needs to have a test play, but to be played with 3 acoustic cellists, so you don't have to have a looping pedal. Because on the album I added like other layers, but just so you know, there's sheet music. Okay, my next piece, I'm going to preface by saying I am not shushing you when I say the title. It is a phrase from a poetic essay by Jordan Imani Keith. And the title of the piece is Shh. We are walking on the shoot seed words. I can't decide what to do because it's like 8:25 and I have like 5 more songs. So I think I'm gonna skip to a piece that was a commission from the Seattle Symphony that I premiered at the Octave 9 space at Benaria Hall in March, the month that my latest album came out. And I got to do whatever I want to write a piece for myself to perform. And so for inspiration, I chose to write this piece based on a poem of Shinyi Pai, who I think is still our current Seattle civic poet. The title is To Solve for Heart, and that is a phrase from her poem, First Grade Math. And I'm going to use my sheet music because I didn't memorize it. Okay, I can do one more or two more. It's 8:32. Do. Okay, okay, let's do two. This next piece, it's called Turn Around. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everyone at BIMA who has made this possible, and Barbara for making this possible. I'm going to end with a piece called Willow Waltzes On.